Today I wanted to react to this video over on The Chosen's YouTube channel talking about Dallas's top 10 scenes from The Chosen so far, of course. I'm sure these scenes are going to change once season 6 is released, and then probably again once season 7 is released. And I wonder at the end what he would say his top 10 are once he's finished with the entire series. I think that would be quite interesting, but I haven't watched this yet, so let's check it out together and I'll give my thoughts as we go through. All right, let's jump in.
Hey there, it's Dallas, and I'm going to give you my top 10 best, favorite, most memorable, impactful scenes that I'm most fond of in The Chosen's history. I've seen a few people give lists of their favorite episodes. People are always talking about their favorite scenes, and so the team and I were talking and thought maybe it'd be interesting just to kind of go through what we love the most. Specifically what I love the most, because everyone on our team has different rankings. I don't want this to come off as self-serving. This isn't me saying, all right, these are the best per se. It's just, these are the ones.
No, these are the official best 10 scenes because they come from Dallas Jenkins. That's how it works. These are the best 10 scenes and that's how it is. It's in the lore now, Dallas. You can't say something without it being the ultimate truth now because it's your show. So now that we are going to dedicate this is the best 10 scenes in all The Chosen, bar none.
Ones that I think are the most meaningful to me, that I personally think as a filmmaker were our best work as a cast and crew, or my co-writers' work as writers or whatever. So I'm just going to give you these 10. I'm going to start.
Okay, like I said, I have not watched this video. Here's my guess for a couple of them that are going to be in here. I think the scene with Gaius is going to be in here. I think the one shot from season 2 is going to be in here. I think, what else do I think? The fish from season 1 is going to be in here. And I would be remiss to say that the moment with Mary Magdalene from season 1, episode 1 is not in here, because every time I talk to anybody from the Chosen team, they always talk about that scene in particular. And Dallas is I feel like a pretty nostalgic, sort of like sentimental type person. So I think season 1, episode 1 with Mary is probably going to be in there too. I don't know about anything else. Could be a lot of different things, but let's continue on.
With 10 and go all the way to 1. And then after that, I'll give us some honorable mentions because I know there's going to be a few that I left off that I know.
Someone's asking in chat, what do I mean by one shot? It's the Oner, the 13-minute long scene without any cuts from season 2, episode 3. Where they were like going around the camp and like Matthew and Philip, everybody has different turns talking throughout this time.
You might actually be very passionate about and be offended that I didn't include. So I'll try to include a couple of those as well. Here's my top 10, we'll just say favorite. So we'll start with number 10, season 2, episode 2. This is Nathaniel meeting Jesus. Now there's a couple reasons why this scene means a lot to me. Number 1, I love the look of it. It's I still tell my cinematographer, Akis, sometimes I'm like, that's one of my favorite scenes we've ever filmed in terms of the look. And he's responsible for 98% of the look of each of the scenes. The backdrop, it was the first year that we had the set in Utah, and it just looked great. I love nighttime scenes. They look especially good. It also has a lot.
Yeah, I love this scene. This is probably my favorite episode of the entire series. If I had to pick one episode out of everything, I think this episode, season 2, episode 2, is my favorite episode of all time. Yeah.
A lot of meaning for me because the Nathaniel storyline, the introduction of Nathaniel in that episode, is similar to my personal story. Failure and confusion and crying out to God saying, do you see me?
Do you see me?
You know, what is my future? What am I here for if not to make movies because I just failed? And so when Jesus speaks to Nathaniel and says, I did see you. I saw you when you were under the fig tree.
Yeah.
And how Nathaniel responds, and it's just a beautiful moment for me. And I know that a lot of you had a strong reaction to that as well. So that's number 10. Number 9 is season 2, episode.
Got him. It's so funny that the first 2 scenes he brings up are both with Yoshi in them. Obviously, Yoshi left after season 3. It's just so funny to me. But back-to-back episodes, these 2, if you don't remember, these 2 episodes were released on the same night. So if you weren't a fan of The Chosen back during season 2, season 2 was like the Wild West of The Chosen because they did things so randomly and weird. because season 2 was being finished, and as they would finish the episodes, they would just immediately release them whenever they were finished. So you didn't have to wait a long time, or like sometimes you were waiting a couple of weeks, next time you were waiting 1 week, next time you were waiting 3 weeks, and it just like these episodes randomly came out during this time. And so if you remember during the live stream, they played episode 2, which they had planned on showing us, and then randomly right after episode 2 was done, they just released episode 3 right back to back. So you got episode 1 the week before, then you got episode 2 and 3 on the same week, and then you got more episodes later on. And so for me, I was like, what is happening right now? You know, we're sitting there, I think, with our small group at the time, and everybody was watching this season with us. We had just started making Chosen content a couple of weeks before with episode 1. And yeah, that was our first few episodes of The Chosen that we were making any content about. And so it's really funny that he has these 2 episodes. This is first 10 and 9 here, right back to back, season 2, episode 2 and 3.
Episode 3, and this is the big oneer, what we call in the industry a oneer, because it's one shot, no edits, 14 minutes long. I love the scene.
I think it's 13:58. I think I timed it one time, but it's like 13 minutes and 58 seconds or something.
Because I like what's happening. I love this notion that Jesus is healing all these people and the disciples are backstage, quote unquote, just wrestling with who Jesus is and what they're doing here. And I just thought this to me exemplifies what The Chosen is about, which is people who are with Jesus trying to make sense of what it's like to be with him. When people watch The Chosen, the question you come in with is like, what would it have been like to be with Jesus, to know Jesus when he was here on earth? And can we recreate that in some way today, right? And of course we can. So I love that aspect of it, but also I remember that day, we rehearsed it 4 or 5 times without cameras, and then we shot it 3 times with a camera, but there was a mess up every time because of course there is. And we finally were down to our last 15 minutes of daylight, and it's a 14-minute scene. And we said, this is it. This is our only chance. And I remember watching it in the tent, in the middle of the scene. I'm literally, because of the camera couldn't connect to the video monitors from too far away.
Yeah, because it's a wireless system, right? So you can't be too far away. So they're sitting there in Jesus's tent. That's why it's like so tightly wrapped up. It's not open, right?
So we had to actually be in the scene, and the camera was going to be showing all 360 degrees. So there was no place for us to hide other than in one of the tents, and we're watching it. And I'm so intense and so...
This is one of the moments right here where Yoshi almost forgets his line and messes up the whole thing. There's like a small pause that you can see, and it's like he almost forgets his line, but then he remembers it and he like is able to say it through. Go back and watch this scene. You'll see a couple of different moments where they almost mess up, but they make it through, and it's incredible.
Nervous and just hoping it goes well, and everyone was nervous and everyone was focused. And then literally as the sun is going down, the scene ends and we got it, and I burst into tears. I remember just being so moved by the fact that we pulled it off in the perfect time, in the perfect look, and it's exactly what we wanted it to look like. And it was just memorable. And at the time, it was probably, I think...
And you can tell they're shooting during COVID. This is like right in the midst of 2020, like right in the midst of COVID. And yeah, that's crazy, man.
If not the longest, but one of the longest one-shots in the history of television. Since then, a few other shows have passed us up, but very, very meaningful. Number 8. This one may surprise you. It's a subtle one, but this is...
Yeah, this is such a great moment. I love this scene too.
Episode 7 of season 4, a conversation between Lazarus and Jesus. This is Lazarus working out the fact that his friend is the Messiah, and what that means isn't just joy and fun and being friends with the Savior of the world. It means he's going to suffer. And Jesus is wrestling with the fact that no one seems to understand that, and that he's essentially alone because no one understands it. And Lazarus is saying, well, I'm your friend. I don't want to see you suffer. And Jesus at one point says, you saw it, you read this.
That's crazy, Peggy, that you weren't watching back then. You got caught up during season 3, you're saying? That's pretty crazy. Let me know in the comments right now for you guys, when did you start watching The Chosen? Were you a season 1er? Like I was there during season 1, like, I guess mid 2019 is when I started watching it. No. We started watching it at the beginning of 2020, like right when COVID started, like literally like one of the first weeks of COVID. We started watching that. We watched all of season 1. Then season 2 came out shortly after. Yeah.
I mean, this is in the prophecies, and Lazarus says,
They were just words on a scroll.
the quiet of that scene, the two of them, these two close friends talking about the biggest issues in the history of the world. That's my favorite thing to do. It's my favorite thing to direct. It's my favorite scene to write. And I have such fondness for that scene. Every time I watch it, I believe it's quintessential Chosen and represents my heart more than probably any other type of scene that we've done. So that's number 8 on the top 10 list, Lazarus and Jesus. Number 7, season 3, episode 2, Jesus and Little James. There's nothing beautiful I mean, it's a good looking scene, but there's nothing epic about it. It's very simple. There's not a big shot that opens it or anything like that. It's two people talking, simple cinematography. Again, nothing's ever fully simple, but I think Akis would agree. This is a fairly simple scene. It's just about the people talking. And I remember writing this scene. This was one that I felt very compelled by when we first cast Jordan Ross as Little James, knowing that eventually we would have to address this moment where a disciple of Jesus is not healed. And that's not, of course, directly from Scripture, but it's a common story throughout history. As a follower of Jesus, someone who has faith, someone who checks all the boxes, ready for a miracle. It's not a faith issue, much unlike some, I was going to insult, but I won't, but how some, I would say, misguided people believe that.
Not the editing getting around Dallas's. That's so funny. This is one thing that I don't often get to do, like, because I do so many things live that I really have to be careful about my words. But Dallas here in a studio being able to be edited, he definitely caught himself there. He felt himself getting angry about the haters there. That's so funny.
It's just a faith issue, and if you have faith, you'll always be healed of everything you want. I think that's stupid and untrue. But this
I love how unfiltered Dallas is quite often. It's one of my favorite things about him, to be honest.
Moment that might not be from Scripture, but I think is capital T truthful. I remember writing this scene and it just poured out. I wrote it in probably 20 minutes and made very few changes. It felt downloaded. It was a kind of encapsulation of all the things that I have learned about Jesus over the years and studied suffering. And I remember Jordan, who plays Little James, didn't want anything changed in it. I mean, it represented the truth of what it's like to experience this. After the scene came out, thousands of people we heard from around the world saying that they had felt seen for the first time in years, some decades, that this scene helped make sense for them of their suffering. And then they were able to find in the Bible more clearly what God has to say about it. So that's always going to be a memorable scene for me. Number 6.
Yeah, we talked about that scene with Little James a lot, for sure. There was a lot of conversation, theological conversation, and understanding what happens, right? Did God ever not heal? Did Jesus ever not heal? Well, yeah, there's definitely times in the Bible where we see that, and times when he couldn't heal. And so, yeah, there's definitely moments when that happens. This moment as well is probably one of the moments where I got the most amount of emails and text messages from people that I know that were like, hey, like, what's happening with The Chosen? Like, are they Mormon? Are they LDS? Like, that was one of the biggest questions I got, because when you first Googled, I am the law of Moses, the first thing that popped up was the Book of Mormon. And so that was a huge question I got from a lot of people, but I talked with Dallas about this a lot during that time to get some clarity of like what he was thinking and where he got this line from. And I'm sure he'll talk about it here, but like, he didn't know that line existed in the Book of Mormon, but it became this huge controversy in season 3 that we talked about a lot.
I am the law of Moses.
That's one line from this scene, but the scene in the synagogue of episode 3 of season 3, one of my favorites, took a long time to write, a long time to figure out. It's actually a sermon by John MacArthur, who ironically enough isn't a big fan of the show. I don't think he's seen it, but he's not a fan of what we're doing. But I love John. His study Bible is the best study Bible ever written, I believe.
Yeah, so John MacArthur was a Reformed pastor, if you don't know who he is. I believe he passed away recently. But he a lot of the Reformed camp does not like The Chosen because they believe it's a violation of the second commandment, which is that you shouldn't have any images of God, basically. So Jesus is God. You're not supposed to have any images of God. But the whole point of the second commandment is that you don't worship those images, right? It's not that you can't have anything that represents God in any way. Otherwise, I think basically any image of like a cross or anything like that would be banned as well. But the whole point is that you're not worshiping an idol, right? Like that's the point of the second commandment, but they take it to a point where like you're not allowed to show Jesus in any TV shows or anything like that.
And he preached a sermon on Jesus preaching in the synagogue in his hometown and what that meant and what the context was and all these things that we don't see in scripture because we don't have all this context. But he was able to point out the connections to the Old Testament, what Jesus was preaching about it, what it meant. And it was very impactful to me. And I was able to incorporate a lot of his thoughts correctly, I believe, his correct thoughts about this scene and Jonathan's performance. I also remember that it took a long time to film. I remember that there's so much dialogue. It's such a long scene. It was hard for all the actors, but everyone was just really focused, and I just love the performance.
Yeah, someone in chat is asking when the Sermon on the Mount was filmed. That was filmed during the crazy cold snap in Texas, where like everybody's like pipes burst and stuff. It was like freezing cold. That was filmed right then. It must have been during 2020. Yeah, Sermon on the Mount is the end of the season. Yeah, I think it was early 2020. Like, was it 2020, 2021? Whenever that cold snap was, look that up. The big freeze that happened in Texas. That's when they shot it.
Performances. I love the build of it. I love the music. I love how the scene starts out with everyone on Jesus' side, and then we see the heartbreaking reality of some of his closest friends, his childhood friends, turning against him. I know that for a lot of you, seeing Rafi and Dinah turn and it was just heartbreaking and angering, but it was realistic. And I think the fact that we were able to portray a moment in Scripture and give faces to it and names to it and see people turning on Jesus, it's just heart-wrenching, and it's going to make it even more heart-wrenching when it happens in season 6. But this whole scene, just the beginning, the middle, and end of it, the filming of it, how we put it together is just always going to be one of my favorites. And then, of course, one of my favorite lines we ever did, "I am the law of Moses," which ultimately ended up becoming one of our most controversial lines we ever did, but for dumb reasons and inaccurate.
For dumb reasons. I'm just used to him having like more, I think he's more padded maybe on live streams, but this is so funny seeing the unfiltered Dallas. It's so great.
Reasons, but I love it, and I love that scene. Number 5, you may not agree with me on this, but I'll explain my reasons. This is the death of Ramah in season 4, episode.
Yeah, I do not agree with this. I think the death of Ramah, there are a lot of different issues for me just logically within the storytelling that I just don't love. I don't mind the death of Ramah necessarily. I think the way that it happened in the show is just kind of like not my favorite thing. I've talked about this at length for the last 2 years. So
3, obviously painful, obviously controversial. I know that good people disagree on this scene. Good people have some valid points for why they didn't necessarily love it. But I think just from a cinematography standpoint, a performance standpoint, a writing standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. The performances were amazing in this scene, for sure. What they're about to show right here is one of the main reasons I think it's silly. Is Thomas walking directly into Quintus and shoulder checking him is crazy to me.
Music standpoint, what it says about the story of following Jesus. I'm as proud of my team for that scene as any scene we've ever done. And I remember watching it.
Like this section right here is what just took me out of it completely.
For the first time with the music, I could barely breathe. And there's one other scene that was like that too that I'll get to later. But that scene, I just think is our best work. So whether or not you like the content of it, I'm sure we can disagree on that. But I just remember all of us watching that scene and when it was coming together in its final state and just being very, very proud of it. But yeah, tough scene. But for all the elements coming together, it's for sure up there as one of my favorites. Number 4, episode 7 of season 1. I put this into 2 parts because it's 2 different scenes, but it's the Nicodemus, then Matthew sequence at the end of that episode. Eric Avari and Jonathan Rumi in the scene on the roof, the most famous chapter in the Bible, John chapter 3, giving context to that, giving human reality to that, all of that, the music, the filming of it, all of it just added up. For my money, it's one of our most impactful scenes we've ever done. It It impacted me as we unpacked it and as we looked through John chapter 3 and really tried to understand all of the meaning of it, how it was set up by the flashback to Moses in the Old Testament that we did at the beginning of that episode.
Connecting him to the bronze serpent on the pole, to him being lifted up and being crucified. Of course, him being God on earth, and how Nicodemus is starting to realize that, and like, you must be sent by God. Yeah, I love all the John 3:16. The whole chapter of John chapter 3 is really amazing. I think it's really well done here as well from Jonathan Rumi and Eric, of course.
Very, very powerful, very moving on set, how Eric reacted in the moment. Some of that stuff, the tears, some of the reactions were not actually planned for, but it was just such a spontaneously powerful scene and moment. And then right after that, we go into the calling of Matthew. So that whole sequence, that kind of 15 minutes or so of whatever that is.
That's cheating. That's not one scene. He's like, I love this whole episode. That's my next scene.
To me, is some of the best work we've done. Again, that may sound arrogant. I'm sorry, but I would just say when I watch it, when it all came together, I think it's the culmination of season 1 and what we were trying to do with this show. Number 3, this is The Miracle of the Fish, season 1, episode 4. This is one of my favorites ever, and I'll always have a fond memory of it because I was out of control. Meaning, we didn't. It's a scene about the miracle of the fish on a water in a boat, and 5 days before the scene, we didn't have a boat, we didn't have a lake, and we didn't have fish, and all pretty essential elements. And so if you look up right now on YouTube, the miracle of the fish, look up that video and you'll see all the behind the scenes of it. But
yeah, it's really cool. The special effects they had to do, and Dallas didn't know if it was going to work. And so all of that was really, really cool.
It's just the team came together. And when I say I'm out of control, it meant that there were so many elements that I couldn't handle myself, that I had to rely on my team. And I remember even the composing of the music for that scene was so different than what I thought it would be and what I had in mind. And it was so much better than I would have done if I was in charge of the music, which, well, I am, I guess. But if I was the composer, I would have thought of something totally different. And Dan and Matt did an extraordinary job. And so that was one of the first indications of, okay, this show is better than I am, and God is in control of this. And I am surrounded by people who are great at their jobs. And that's a really good feeling.
The first of 3 Big Jameses in this scene as well. I always love seeing the changes between Big James in the first half of the first season, then the second half of the first season, and then of course we've got Abe now.
So I'll always have a special place in my heart for that scene, and also just what it means. I mean, it's when Simon breaks and surrenders to Christ. And I remember it was actually Jonathan's idea to kneel down and be eye to eye with Simon when he tells him to follow him. And I remember when Jonathan showed me what he wanted to do, I immediately got emotional. So very, very powerful. Number 2 of my top 10 is the season finale of season 3, The Walking on Water. My goodness, talk about being out of control. That scene didn't look and sound good until about 8 months after we filmed it, because we filmed it near the beginning of the season, and then I had to wait a long time for the visual effects to come through, and that was a painful process, but a good process. The visual effects team was unbelievable, but it just took so many hours, and I mean hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of extraordinary behind the scenes work. And in fact, I would encourage you to watch the video too. Just look up, season 3, Walking on Water, right? Or I'm forgetting the name of the scene of the video. Hopefully they'll link it. That scene, the making of it was huge, but I love what it means. I remember the first time, it was actually Tyler's idea, I believe, to do the Eden, showing Eden going into the mikveh at the same time and saying, don't let him go. I remember reading that and just bawling. And Peter saying, don't let me go. And Eden saying, don't let him go. The intimacy of a scene that otherwise is so epic and so big and it has such great work done by our team, but ultimately is about Simon coming to grips with the pain of the miscarriage of his wife and wondering why Jesus is taking care of some and what he thought wasn't taking care of Simon. And when he says,
I've been right here in front of you, believing in you, but you're breaking up fights in the Decapolis? Then come to me, you weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest.
Yeah, so when this came out, from my side of things, this season 3 is when I went full time on YouTube. Okay. So season 3 is, I had gone full time probably 6 to 8 months before season 3 was coming out. And I had my Israel trip in late January, early February of 2023. And so I had my Israel trip with Brandon Robbins and David Tate, if you remember him. Now let's be honest. And so we were going to go on this trip, but we were going to miss the last few episodes of The Chosen. And so we actually made a deal with Daryl Eves and with the Chosen team that we could get early access to some of these episodes, and that we could make our videos ahead of time so that we could go out and put them out as the episodes were airing. And so we did. So we got early access to the finale of these episodes, to the finale episodes of this season. So episodes 7 and 8. And we got to make early episodes basically so that they would be ready for the time that, the episodes aired to everybody else. Because remember, this is before they were doing like theatrical releases, for example, for the seasons. That release started in season 4. So, luckily we got to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to make videos on time for these episodes. I would have had to wait at least a week or two before we got back from Israel in order for those episodes to come out. So for me and Brandon and for David, it was really a huge thing that we got early access to those. It was really, really helpful. And so that was great there. That was during 2023. So that was like the big, a big turning point on our channel, because we grew a lot. Remember, this is before The Chosen Sleuth even existed. I didn't start The Chosen Sleuth until season 4 of The Chosen. Until right before season 4 of The Chosen. And so we had done all of season 3 on the Snipe Life, and talked about all of that. But I got to watch this kind of before anybody else. So it was a really interesting time. We had guessed at the time that they were going to do either the calming of the sea or the walking on water. It turned out to be both, right? Both at the same time, because at the very end of this, he calms the storm as well. And so, yeah, really interesting stuff. Now, we knew some of what was going to happen in the finale because we were actually there for the feeding of the 5,000. And so we weren't extras or anything. We were on the sidelines, and we took a bunch of content during that time. And I still use a lot of the pictures that I took of the cast in my thumbnails today, because it's some of the best pictures that I got to take from being there, and having different emotions on their faces or whatever that I can use for my thumbnails. And so some of my best pictures I took back then, I still use them today, which is really, really, really helpful. But yeah, so this was a great scene. I don't know if it would be in my top 10 though. I don't know if it would be in my top 10 personally.
All of that scene, I think it says so much about Jesus and who he is, and that moment in Scripture. I just love it, love it, love it. I love watching it. And I remember the first time I watched it with the music and the effects had finally been done, I could not breathe. I was just silent. I was just so moving to me. Number one, my favorite or my most impactful or the most influential or whatever you want to call it, scene in The Chosen's history has to go to season 1, episode 1, You Are Mine, the moment where Jesus redeems Mary Magdalene. And the reason for that is, if that scene didn't work, I don't think we have a show. Episode 1 of this show is so dense.
Told you. Every time I talk to any of the Chosen team, they talk about this scene in particular.
And complicated, and it actually moves fairly slowly. I don't say that in a bad way. I know some people thought, oh, it's a little slow. Well, that's on purpose, right? I mean, it's introducing you to this world. It's introducing you to these characters. So many people were like, well, where's Jesus? And who's this guy? And it was all stuff that's kind of before Jesus intrudes in the best way possible. And taking the time to set up Mary Magdalene and trying to get her character right, trying to honor who she truly was, and to give agency to her, and to give voice to what it's like to be demon-possessed and what could have potentially caused demon possession. So many people involved in the show at that time were telling me how important it was to get Mary Magdalene right. And it took a long, long time to write that episode, a long time to write that storyline, and a long time to write that scene, and then to edit that scene to make sure it was as impactful as possible with the music and the slow motion and all of that. And maybe make sure that it really was an ending that when you finished that episode, you were like, I have to keep watching.
Yeah, I wasn't sold on the first episode, I'll be honest. I wasn't sold on the first 2 episodes. It wasn't until episode 3 that I was actually like, okay, this could work. This could work for sure. I was worried that it would eventually get cheesy and weird. But of course that didn't really happen, became, what it is now. But I wasn't really sold until that 3rd episode. We watched maybe 2 or 3 episodes in the first day that we were watching it. And I only watched it, by the way, because my wife made me watch it, because I don't think I would have watched it on my own, at least not for a while, until I had heard about how good it is. I was always interested in biblical media, but there's so many bad projects, just like a lot of you are talking about with your experiences with The Chosen. There are so many bad projects that are just like how can I get into another bad project, another cheesy, Christian thing. And so finally having something like this was great, but I wasn't really hooked on this first episode. Now, what I am really intrigued by in the future of the season and the future of the series is having the connecting point from this moment right here into, where it's going to be for season 7, because season 7 is going to be, I think, an exact mirror of this, where we're going to have Mary Magdalene in the garden, and she's going to think that the man that's in the garden is the gardener, which we see in scripture, and then it turns out to be Jesus. And I think the exact same thing's going to happen here. It's going to be a mirror of it, where we're going to have her at one of the last episodes of, probably in the very end episode of season 7, episode 8, is probably going to be like, she's walking away from the gardener, and then he says, Mary of Magdala. And then there's like maybe even this same music from episode 1, the same slow-mo. Maybe she drops a cup again. I think it's all going to be mirrored exactly the same. And then she's going to turn around and recognize him, that it's Jesus, and she's going to freak out, right? And then they're going to do the same thing where she like leans into him and he hugs her. I think it's going to be exactly mirrored, which will be so beautiful to see.
And how Jesus was introduced in a bar, finding Mary at her lowest point, how we introduced with his hand, right, on hers, saying that.
Yeah, imagine Jesus is introduced in a bar, then he's reintroduced in a graveyard, right? Like totally disparate areas.
That's not for you. Those are the first words Jesus utters in The Chosen. That's not for you. Because that's what the show is about, life change. And putting aside the old and embracing the new. And when she doesn't embrace it, she runs from him. He pursues her and calls her by name and says, you are mine. And I to this day, I hear frequently from grown men, but women, men, children, everyone all over the world who tell me that scene changed their life. And that scene is the reason why they watch The Chosen. And so that'll always, I think, be the most important, at least, scene that we've ever done. It's now a painting called You Are Mine, which has blessed a lot of people in their homes. So that's a big deal for me and always will be number one. All right. Now, right now you are going, wait a minute, are you kidding me? How could you, not include X, Y, Z? So I'll give you some of my.
Let's see. What would I want him to include that he didn't include? What are some good things? Yeah, Gaius, like I said earlier on, I thought he was going to include Gaius for season 4, episode 4. That's pretty huge for me, for sure. Obviously, Sermon on the Mount, the feeding the 5,000, those things are huge. I'm surprised he didn't put feeding the 5,000 on there. He likes the more intimate moments, but feeding the 5,000 was huge, a big push forward for the show, I think. Obviously, the raising of Lazarus would be massive, because this is after season 5, so he could have included that. Yeah, raising of Lazarus would be huge. The flipping of the tables in season 5. Yeah, there's so much. Obviously, the Last Supper in its entirety. The Garden of Gethsemane, the betrayal of Judas. Yeah, there's so much that he could have added. I wonder what he's going to say here, though.
Honorable mentions very quickly. So I've got the healing of Veronica, the bleeding woman. I know for a lot of people that was impactful. Of course, I love that scene and I love the performances and all of that, but just couldn't quite make the list. There were other scenes that accomplished a lot of the same things that just are a little bit closer to home for me. But yeah, I love that scene. Not quite top 10. Gaius hugging Jesus at the end of episode 4 of season 4. Beautiful imagery. I love that scene, just not quite top 10. Lowering Through the Roof, episode 6 of season 1. The music blew me away. The filming of that took us 5 days to film one scene. It's the introduction of Tamar. Of course, she'd been introduced earlier in the episode, but first scene where Jonathan is preaching as Jesus to a crowd. And while we were filming that scene, that was when he first kind of felt the weight of it and said, I don't feel worthy of this. And that's when we both kind of embraced this notion of we're not worthy of this. So I'll always have a special place in my heart for that scene. The Beatitudes, when Jesus delivers the Beatitudes in a unique.
This is one of my favorite scenes from season 2 as well. Yeah.
Unique way. Instead of just preaching them, we show him delivering them after he's been praying to his Father, and he delivers them to Matthew to be written down, and how that impacted Matthew. I just remember while we were filming it thinking, man, we get a chance to bring these to the world again, and using the flashbacks of his disciples to bring face to what the Beatitudes mean. Always love that. I'm a big fan of the scene where Eden tells Simon that she's had a miscarriage, just because it felt so real. It felt so authentic. I thought both of them did a great job. It was one of Lotta Silver's best, probably her best performance in the show of many, but that scene when she says, when she kind of stops herself and can barely talk, when she's sad and angry and then also comforting of him at the same time. I love the performances of that scene. It's so intense. So that's always going to be a favorite of mine. Of course, the feeding of the 5,000. Our most epic scene, 4,500 people all in one place. Of course, it represents this, the name of our studio, 5 and 2 Studios. So many things went into that scene, and the team came together. It's our biggest, scariest scene we've ever done, and yet it came off beautifully. I love the music that Dan and Matt did for that, kind of Jimi Hendrix, just so cool. And
I'm not a fan of the music, but I thought the rest of the scene was great. Yeah.
Oh, I love that scene, one of our biggest, but it's followed by the Walking on Water, which I put on this list. So I couldn't have those two both in the top 10. Although they maybe should, I don't know. But those are my honorable mentions. There's many more, of course. You can write them in the comments. You can give your top.
Yep. Yeah, let me know your top 10. If you guys want me to do my top 10 video, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe I'll do a top 10 video as well. Give you my thoughts on what I think are the best moments within The Chosen in its entirety. I'd have a different list than Dallas, I think, for sure. So let me know in the comments down below if you want me to do that. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.